Dear all viewers, you are listening the Alpa's King love story. In that story, you will enjoy a lot of thrilled, love, and more interesting ending. Before starting story, please subscribe my channel because your one like and subscribe means a lot to me. And after it, please share your thoughts on comments. And if you like the story, so share it with your circle as well. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Price of a Life. The contract was written in cold ink and colder intent. For the forgiveness of a mountain of debt, they traded her. For 30 silver coins and a cleared ledger, her stepmother sold her future. I was 18 years old when the Alpha of Thornwood Pack, Alden Vane, signed the parchment that sealed my fate. They handed me over like a piece of furniture, a burden finally removed. For 3 long years, I had been the ghost of Stonehaven Manor. I scrubbed the filth from the floors where they feasted. I slept in the cellar that wept with dampness every winter. I ate the scraps they threw to the hounds. And I kept my secret. They all thought I was broken, a wolf who never shifted, a silent, worthless creature. They didn't know about the leather band I wore, the one that never left my wrist. They didn't know my mother's final, feverish words were a warning, not madness. They didn't understand the strange mark seared into my skin beneath that band was not a scar. It was a lock, and every lock, when pressure is applied, has a breaking point. When the merciless Shadow King, Caelan Thorne, finally tore that band from my arm, he wasn't looking at a servant's brand. He was staring at the lost symbol of a forgotten dynasty, the crimson star of the Solara, the wolves of dawn, who were wiped from history a century ago. In that moment, the servant covered in soot became more valuable than his entire kingdom, and I had no idea my world was about to shatter. The air in the cellar beneath Stonehaven was thick with the smell of earth and decay. I woke before the sun, as always, to the familiar drip, drip, drip of water finding its way through the cracked stones above. The cold seeped into my bones. At 18, in any normal wolf pack, I would have found my form, my place, my purpose, but my wolf was a void, a silence where a roar should have lived. I was, by every measure, defective, and defective wolves were not given rooms, they were given corners. I climbed the groaning stairs, my bare feet numb against the frost-touched wood. The manor was already stirring. I could hear the clang of iron in the kitchen, the sharp, commanding tone of my stepmother. I moved like a shadow, slipping into the narrow servants' passage. I wasn't quick enough. Look what crawled up from the roots. Leandra leaned against the kitchen doorway, a honeyed pastry in her perfectly manicured hand. She was everything I was not, voluminous chestnut hair, curves that turned heads, and a wolf that emerged sleek and powerful at 16. At 20, she had suitors from 3 neighboring packs. She took a slow, deliberate bite, her hazel eyes sweeping over my threadbare dress with contempt. Mother wants the great hall immaculate. The Alpha is coming, a real Alpha, she sneered. Try not to stain the air with your presence. She tossed the half-eaten pastry to the floor at my feet and glided away. I stared at it, the flaky crust, the glisten of berry jam. My stomach clenched. I picked it up and ate it as I walked. Dignity was a luxury the hungry could not afford. The great hall was a testament to the night's excess. Stained rugs, greasy bones, the sour scent of spilled ale. I gathered my bucket, my brush, the lye soap that had long since etched a permanent map of cracks into my hands. I scrubbed. The rhythmic motion was a kind of meditation. As I worked, my sleeve slid back, revealing the worn leather band circling my left wrist. It was soft from years of wear, and I never, ever removed it, not to wash, not to sleep. My mother had fastened it there herself on the night she died. Her hand was so cold. "Never let them see the star, my little Elara," she had whispered, her voice fading. Promise me, they will destroy you if they know." I was 6 years old, clutching her hand as her life seeped into the forest floor. I didn't understand then. I barely understood now, but I kept my promise. The mark beneath the band sometimes hummed, a low, warm pulse that flared when I was angry or afraid. I had learned to ignore it, just as I had learned to ignore the hunger and the scorn. I was nearly finished when the main doors crashed open. Alden Vane, Alpha of Thornwood, strode in, his beta at his heel. He was a broad man with a permanent scowl and eyes that made my skin crawl. Isolde, my stepmother, appeared instantly, her face a mask of obsequious charm. "Alpha Vane, to what do we owe—" "Quiet," he cut her off. His gaze swept the room and landed on me, kneeling by the hearth. A slow, unpleasant smile spread across his face. "I have a buyer for the girl." My blood turned to ice in my veins. Isolde's expression flickered, surprise, then swift calculation, then something chillingly like relief. "A buyer? For her?" "The Shadow King needs servants for his northern fortress, hardy ones. He pays handsomely, enough to clear your debts to me with plenty to spare." Alden chuckled, a sound like grinding stones. I couldn't breathe. The brush fell from my nerveless fingers with a clatter. Isolde turned to look at me, and for the first time in years, she offered a genuine smile. It was the coldest thing I had ever seen. "Sold," she said brightly. "When do they collect her?" The word echoed in my skull. Sold, sold, sold. I scrambled to my feet, the bucket of dirty water tipping over. "You can't. I'm not property. I'm pack. The old laws—" "The old laws," Alden Vane interrupted, stepping so close I could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. "The laws say a wolf who cannot shift is no wolf at all. You are a drain, girl, a flaw. Be thankful I found someone to take you off our hands." "The Shadow King," I whispered, my voice trembling. "His stories were legend. His servants didn't just leave, they vanished. His fortress, it's a death sentence." "He pays," Isolde said smoothly, her voice devoid of all warmth. "That is the only sentence that matters." Leandra had appeared, watching with unveiled glee. "That is the only sentence that matters." Leandra had appeared, watching with unveiled glee. "Maybe the mountain cold will finally put some color in your cheeks, little ghost, or perhaps it will just freeze you solid. Either way, the view here will improve." The mark on my wrist burned, a sudden, sharp pain that made me gasp. "Not now. Please, not now." The plea was ash in my mouth. I looked at Isolde, searching for any remnant of the woman who had once brushed my hair. "Stepmother, I have served. I have never complained. I can work harder. I can—" "You will do as you are told," Isolde stated flatly. "The king's men arrive at dusk. See she is prepared." Prepared, like livestock for market. The hours that followed were a blur of degradation. I was hauled to the washroom, scrubbed raw by indifferent hands. They tried to remove my band. "No," I snarled, yanking my arm back with a force that startled us both. "It stays." The washerwoman eyed me. "The king's house won't tolerate your rags." "It stays." My voice dropped, and something shifted in my gaze. The woman paled and took a step back. The band stayed. They dressed me in rough-spun gray wool, the uniform of the sold, and bound my wrists loosely with coarse rope, a symbol, not a restraint. At dusk, I was led to the front courtyard. A black carriage waited, a monstrous thing of wrought iron and shadows, pulled by 4 jet-black horses. The crest on the door was a wolf's head shrouded in mist, the sigil of the Thorn dynasty, the Shadow King. His name was Kalen Thorn, and the stories painted him as a creature of nightmare. They said his wolf was made of living shadow. They said he hadn't spoken a word in 5 years. not since the plague took his family. A man in obsidian livery stepped down. He looked me over with the disinterest of a man inspecting a tool. "This is the one, Elara," Alden confirmed. "Strong enough for labor, meek, wolfless, no trouble." The man circled me. "She'll do." He gestured to the carriage. "Inside." I took one last look at Stonehaven. Isolde and Leandra stood on the steps. Neither waved. Leandra simply smirked. "Remember this," a voice that was not quite my own whispered in the depths of my mind. "Remember, and one day make them remember too." I climbed into the dark, cold interior. The door shut with a final thud, sealing me in. As the carriage lurched forward, I watched my miserable life disappear behind the trees. Ahead lay the jagged northern peaks, the fortress of obsidian, and the king whose very name was a warning. The star on my wrist pulsed, a steady, burning beat against the leather, a silent counterpoint to the rolling wheels. Chapter 2: The Fortress of Shadows. The journey was a descent into another world. For 3 days the carriage climbed, the air growing thinner and sharper. The gentle forests of thornwood gave way to gnarled pines, and then to bare, wind-swept cliffs that clawed at a perpetually gray sky. I slept fitfully, ate the hard bread passed through a grate, and said nothing. On the third morning, I saw it. The fortress of obsidian wasn't built, it was grown. It erupted from the mountain's peak like a crystallization of the darkness itself, a jagged cluster of black towers and bridges that defied gravity. It seemed to absorb the weak daylight, leaving only deeper shadows in its wake. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. The carriage passed through gate after imposing gate, each guarded by silent sentinels in black armor who looked through me. I was less than cargo. I was a transaction completed. The final gate opened into a vast, stark courtyard of black flagstones. The cold here was a living thing, biting through my thin dress. I stepped out, legs trembling. A woman approached. Her hair was steel gray, pulled tight, her face a monument to discipline. A heavy ring of keys hung at her waist. "Name, Elara. You will address me as Mistress Greer. You speak when spoken to, you work until you drop, you sleep when I permit. Understood?" I nodded, my throat sealed shut. "Thin," she noted clinically, "but you'll do for the lower halls. Follow." Processing was a line of hollow-eyed girls, all in gray. We were measured, questioned. When asked my skills, I recited my life. Cleaning, scrubbing, mending. The officer didn't look up. "East Wing Scullery. She can start in the laundries." I was given another gray dress, ill-fitting shoes, and a thin blanket that smelled of strangers. My new home was a narrow dormitory with 7 others, our cots lined up like graves. The work began instantly. The laundries were a hell of steam, lye, and back-breaking labor. Heavy, wet sheets, scalding water, hands rubbed raw. I learned the fortress's rhythms through exhaustion. The king was a ghost in his high tower. Mistakes were met with the lash in the yard. 2 servants had died last month, one fever, one a fall from a high walkway. I kept my head down, my band secure, my secret burning quietly against my skin. On my 4th day, the fragile routine shattered. I was carrying a basket of clean linens down a deserted corridor when a door flew open. A guard stumbled out, reeking of ale. His eyes, bloodshot and bleary, landed on me. "Well, well, new little mouse." He blocked my path. "No need to rush. The sheets won't get cold." I tried to sidestep him. "Please, sir, I have my duties." He mirrored my movement, his grin widening. "Duties can wait." His hand shot out, not for me, but for my wrist. His fingers closed over the leather and yanked. The knot held, but the force ripped my sleeve from wrist to elbow. The mark was exposed. It was the size of a golden coin, a perfect, intricate star with 7 points etched in the inner part of my wrist, and in the dim torchlight, it was glowing, a soft, pulsing radiance that had nothing to do with the flames on the wall. The guard's drunken leer vanished, replaced with stunned confusion. I didn't wait. I shoved the laundry basket into his chest and ran. I didn't stop until I found a niche behind a stack of crates, my back pressed to cold stone, lungs burning. Stupid. Careless. I looked at my wrist. The glow was fading, but the mark was stark and visible against my pale skin. I frantically tried to tie the torn fabric back, my fingers fumbling. It wouldn't hold. I stayed hidden, waiting for the alarm, for the guards to drag me away, but no one came. Perhaps he was too drunk. Perhaps he thought it a trick of the light. I crept back to the laundries, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs for the rest of the day. That night, as I lay on my cot listening to the sighs and whimpers of the other girls, the dormitory door opened. Mistress Greer stood silhouetted in the torchlight from the hall. "Elara of Thornwood, come." My blood ran cold. "Where?" "The king's tower. His study requires cleaning. Tonight." A beat of heavy silence. Alone. The other girls stilled. I felt their pity, their relief. I rose, my legs unsteady, and followed her into the labyrinth. The king's tower was accessed by a narrow bridge of black iron that sang in the mountain wind. I crossed it without looking down, my eyes fixed on the ominous door ahead. 2 statuesque guards flanked it. Mistress Greer produced a heavy key. "Clean the study. Touch nothing else. Do not speak. Do not look at him. Be a ghost. Is that clear?" I nodded, unable to form words. The door opened silently, and she pushed me inside before closing it behind me. I was in a circular antechamber, lit by a single iron chandelier. 3 doors led off. A small table held cleaning supplies. The study. Which door? A wild, storm-scented air, ozone and pine, and something profoundly powerful drew me to the left. I opened the door. It was a library, vast and ancient, shelves soaring into darkness, and I was not alone. "You are not the one who usually comes." The voice came from the deep shadows by a great window. It was low, resonant, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was the sound of the mountain itself speaking. I froze. A figure uncoiled from a high-backed chair. He stepped into the faint circle of candlelight, and my world tilted. Caelan Thorne was not the monster of the stories. He was beautiful, in a terrifying glacial way. Tall, with shoulders that spoke of restrained power, hair the color of a raven's wing, and a face carved from angles and sharp lines. But his eyes, they were the color of a winter storm, a swirling, volatile gray, and they were fixed on me with an intensity that pinned me in place. "The usual girl is ill," I managed, my voice a thin thread. "Mistress Greer sent me." "Did she?" It wasn't a question. He moved closer, soundless, a predator's grace. I kept my eyes down, fixed on his boots. "You are from Thornwood." He circled me slowly. "I can smell the damp earth and fear on you." I said nothing. My wrist was on fire, the heat searing up my arm. "Please, no. Look at me." The command was soft, but it brooked no disobedience. My head lifted against my will. My violet eyes met his stormy gray. Something flickered there, a spark of recognition. It was gone in an instant. "You have seen too much for one so young," he murmured. He reached out, his movements deliberate, and his fingers closed around my left wrist, right over the torn fabric. A jolt like lightning shot through me. The star beneath blazed. Golden light erupted, searing through the cloth, painting the bookshelves in dancing auric patterns. Caelan Thorne released me as if scalded. He stared at the light bleeding through my sleeve, his stormy eyes widening with something akin to shock. "Show me," he commanded, his voice suddenly urgent, stripped of its ice. "Show me the mark, now." My hands shook as I pulled back the ruined fabric. The star was no longer just glowing, it was a light. A miniature sun burned against my skin, the 7 points radiating pure golden energy. And it was spreading. The light traced pathways under my skin, rivers of fire rushing up my arm. Agony, beautiful and terrifying, lanced through me. I cried out, falling to my knees. "What is happening to me?" Kalen Thorne dropped to kneel before me, his face inches from mine. His expression was one of awe. "You are awakening," he said, his voice hushed. "After a century of silence, the dawn star is rising." The light consumed everything. Chapter 3. The Dawn Star Ignites. The light didn't just fill the room, it became the room. It was a silent explosion of gold, pouring from my skin, from my eyes, from the very core of my being. It was fire that did not burn, but remade. I felt my bones humming, my blood singing a song older than language. The void inside me, the silent, shameful emptiness where my wolf should have been, shattered. In its place, a presence roared to life. It was ancient, feminine, and blazing with fury. They hid us, they chained us, they made us forget what we are. The voice in my mind was mine, yet not mine. It was power given thought. "But we are awake now, little one, and we will bow to no one." My back arched. A sound tore from my throat, not a scream, but a clear, resonant note that shimmered in the air. The library windows shattered outwards. Books flew from shelves. The candle flames shot upward and then died, snuffed by the overwhelming radiance. And the light kept going. It blasted through the tower walls in a shockwave of pure energy. It washed over the fortress, over the mountains, a silent golden dawn in the dead of night. Every wolf in Obsidian felt it. It was a pressure, a command, a memory. Soldiers on patrol collapsed to their knees. Servants in the lower halls wept without knowing why, and visiting dignitaries in their chambers felt their own wolves whimper and bare their throats in instinctive submission. And in the heart of the storm, Kalen Thorne, the Shadow King, knelt before a laundry girl as she became a sun. When the light finally receded, ebbing back into my skin, I was changed. I stood in the center of the ravaged study, my gray dress gone, disintegrated. I was naked, but modesty felt irrelevant. My skin held a subtle, pearl-like luminescence. My hair, once plain brown, now fell in waves of shimmering, sun-kissed gold. When I opened my eyes, they were no longer violet. They were the color of molten amber, holding the light within. "Impossible," Kalen breathed, still on one knee, looking up at me with undisguised reverence. The Solara were annihilated. Vorin the Sunderer burned their city, every last one. The histories are absolute. "The histories," I said, and my voice echoed with harmonic layers, "are written by the victors. One escaped, hidden, sealed away, waiting." I looked at my wrist. The star was still there, but it was now raised, a tactile sigil on my skin, warm and thrumming with power. "You knew," I said, turning those new golden eyes on him. "You knew when you touched me." "I suspected," he admitted, rising slowly. "There have been whispers for years, echoes in old magic, scouts searching. I never imagined you would be delivered to me as a servant." The door burst open, guards flooded in, swords drawn, followed by a pale and shaken Mistress Greer. They skidded to a halt, confronted by the impossible scene. Their king, a radiant naked woman, and the palpable ancient power that still vibrated in the air. "My king!" the captain stammered, blade pointing shakily at me. "Step away from her. She is the last daughter of the Solara bloodline." Kalen's voice cut through the room like a whip, and the next person who points a weapon at her will find it melted in their hand." He shrugged out of his long black coat and draped it around my shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled of frost, cedar, and deep, quiet power. "Clear the room," he ordered. "Seal the tower. No one enters. We will discuss the security lapse later." The room emptied in a terrified rush. Alone again, the immense fatigue hit me. I swayed, clutching the coat. Kaylin's hand was at my elbow, steadying me. "I don't understand," I whispered, the echoes leaving my voice, leaving me just me. "What am I? What does this mean?" He guided me to an intact chair. "It means your entire life has been a lie constructed to keep you alive. It means you are the most precious and the most hunted being on this continent." His stormy eyes were serious. "And it means you need to rest. The vultures will be circling by morning." Chapter 5. Whispers in the Dark. I awoke in a bed that belonged in a fairy tale, a cavernous canopy bed draped in silvery gray silk in a room with a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations. A fire crackled in a hearth big enough to stand in. I was wearing a soft nightgown of exquisite linen. For a long moment, I just lay there, terrified it was a dream. But the steady, warm pulse from the star on my wrist confirmed the impossible truth. "You slept for 16 hours. Kaylin's voice came from a chair by the window. He was watching the sunrise paint the peaks in pink and gold. He looked weary, but the harsh lines of his face seemed softer in the morning light. He was dressed simply, but the authority clung to him. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been rebuilt from the inside out," I said honestly, my voice rough. "Hungry." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He gestured to a laden tray nearby. There was broth, soft bread, fruit. He brought me a cup of herbal tea. "The awakening would have drained anyone. Your power was bound since childhood, a desperate act to hide your nature. The bindings finally broke." I sipped the tea, the warmth spreading. "My mother, she gave me the band?" "Your mother was brave and cunning," he said, pulling his chair closer. "A century ago, the Elara were the rulers of the Central Pacts. They were wolves of light, blessed with gifts of healing, foresight, and combat prowess that made other alphas seem like children playing at war." His expression darkened. "Then came Vorin the Sunderer. He didn't just want to rule. He believed the Solara's power was an abomination, a theft from the moon goddess. He waged a war of extermination. The burning. He slaughtered them all. Or so it was believed. My mother survived. She hid, had me, and died to protect the secret." Kaylin nodded. "The seal on your power wasn't just concealment, it was a life preserver. A Elara child shines like a beacon. She muted you, made you appear defective to save you." The tears came then, hot and sudden. All those years of shame, of being less than, were a shield, a painful, brilliant shield. "Who killed her?" My voice was hard. "The Crimson Sun." He said the name like a curse. "A cult, descendants of Vorin's most fanatical followers. They have spent a century hunting down any whisper of Elara blood. They found your mother. They—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I saw it in my mind's eye, the blood on the forest floor. "They're still out there," I stated. "Yes. And now they will know you live. The energy pulse last night, it will have been felt for hundreds of miles." "Why protect me?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "What does the Shadow King gain from harboring a living target?" He was silent for a long moment, his stormy eyes searching mine. "Because my bloodline is dying," he said, finally, the words stark and heavy. "The thorns carry a shadow curse, a poison in our veins. Each generation is weaker, lives shorter. I am the last. I will not see 40 winters." He leaned forward. Ancient texts speak of a single antidote, the balancing of shadow with true, untainted dawn light. The union of our bloodlines is the only recorded cure. I stiffened. You want to use me to save yourself. I want to save what is left of my people, he corrected, his voice low. But I will not force a bond. You are not a prisoner. You are under my protection. You may stay, train, learn what you are, or I will give you gold and a path to the human lands where you can disappear. The choice is yours. He stood. Rest. When you are ready, your training begins. Your power is awake, but it is a wild river. If you do not learn to channel it... He paused at the door. The power can consume its wielder. The crimson sun is not the only danger. He left, and I was alone with the immensity of my new reality. I was a princess of a dead kingdom, a key to a dying king's survival, a beacon for fanatics, and I had a choice. For the first time in my life, I had a real, true choice. Chapter 5. The First Spark. My training began 2 days later in a secluded courtyard high in the fortress, shielded from prying eyes. My tutor was an ancient wolf named Alistar, who claimed to have been a scribe in a library that held Elara texts before the burning. He was wiry, with eyes the color of mist, and infinite patience. "Power is not about force, child," he said on my first attempt as I strained to produce a flicker of light and succeeded only in making my fingertips glow erratically. "It is about intent. You are trying to push the river. You must become the river bed and let it flow." For days, it was a frustrating dance of failure and tiny breakthroughs. I learned to summon small orbs of soft light. I learned that my touch could warm cold stone. I learned that my emotions were fuel. Fear made the light sputter and die. Calm focus made it steady and bright. Kaelin watched from the shadows sometimes, a silent, brooding presence. One evening, after I had accidentally caused a small shrub to burst into premature blossom, Alistar declared the lesson over. I stayed in the courtyard as twilight fell, practicing. I heard a footstep behind me. "You are trying too hard," Kaelin's voice came softly. I didn't turn. "Alistar says the same, but it's like trying to tell my heart not to beat." He moved to stand beside me, looking out at the darkening peaks. "Your power is part of you. It is not a tool you wield. It is your breath, your blood." He held out his own hand. Shadows pooled in his palm, swirling like liquid night. "My curse is the same. It is not something I do, it is something I am. The fight is not to control it, but to harmonize with it." I watched the shadows dance. They were beautiful, in a dark, profound way. "Does it hurt?" I asked quietly. "Always," he said simply, closing his hand, the shadows dissipating. "But it is my hurt to bear." He turned to me. "Why did you not choose to leave? The human territories offer safety, obscurity." I looked down at my wrist, at the star that now seemed a part of me. "I'm tired of being invisible," I said. "I spent my life being nothing, being less. I don't want to run and hide again. I want to become what I was meant to be, even if it's dangerous." He studied me, his stormy eyes unreadable. "Then we continue, but know this, Elara of the Elara, the path of becoming is the hardest path of all." He left me with the stars and the echo of his words. That night, in my new chambers, I looked at my reflection. The girl who stared back had determined eyes and a quiet strength in her bearing. The servant was gone. Who would take her place was still a mystery. Chapter 7. The Unwelcome Delegation. A week after my awakening, the outside world crashed into our precarious peace. The warning horns blared, 3 long, mournful notes. I was in the courtyard with Alistar when Kaelin appeared, his expression a mask of cold fury. "Thornwood is at the gates," he said, his voice flat. Alden Vane, and he's not alone. My heart seized. We met them in the great hall, a vast chamber of black stone and banners. I stood beside Kaelin's throne, not on it, but close. I wore a gown of cream and gold, my hair braided simply, my birthmark visible. I would not hide from them. The doors swung open. Alden Vane swaggered in, flanked by his warriors, and behind him Isolde and Leandra, dressed in fine travel clothes, their faces a mixture of greed and triumph. Alpha Thorn, I come to reclaim what is mine, the girl Elara. The sale was fraudulent, we were not informed of her condition. Her condition, Kaelin said, his tone dangerously calm, is that she is under my protection. The transaction was legal. She belongs to no one. She is Thornwood Pack, Isolde cried, stepping forward with false tears. My poor, confused stepdaughter, the trauma of being sold has clearly unhinged her. She needs to come home, to family. The hypocrisy stole my breath. Leandra's eyes raked over my gown with pure venom. Look at her, playing dress-up. It doesn't change what's underneath. A wolfless runt we took in out of charity. Something inside me, the new, fierce thing, stirred. I stepped forward. Charity? My voice, clear and ringing, silenced the hall. Charity was the dry cellar? Charity was the dog's scraps? Charity was selling me for 30 pieces of silver and a clean ledger? I looked at Alden. You called me a drain, a flaw. You sold me for 30 pieces of silver and a clean ledger. I turned my gaze to Isolde. You were happy to see me go. You called me sold with a smile. I saved my last look for Leandra. And you enjoyed every moment of my misery. I took a deep breath. I am not confused. I see you all perfectly clearly for the first time. Alden's face purpled with rage. Enough. I invoke the right of reclamation under pack law. She is mine. Kaelin moved. One moment he was on the dais, the next he had Alden by the throat, lifting the larger man onto his toes. Shadows swirled around Kaelin like a living cloak. You dare invoke law in my hall? He growled, the sound barely human. You sold her. The deal is done, but I am not unjust. He dropped Alden, who stumbled back, choking. The law also permits trial by combat to settle such disputes. Choose a champion. I will choose mine. Alden's eyes, full of hate, locked on me. I choose myself. Alpha against your champion. When I win, the girl returns with me. Before Kaelin could speak, I stepped down from the dais. The earth gasped. No champion, I said, my voice steady. I will not have others fight my battles anymore. I looked at Alden Vane, my new golden eyes hardening. I will show him exactly what he traded for silver. The hall fell silent. Tomorrow at dawn, Kaelin declared, his voice heavy with resignation. To the yield, to the death, and I meant it. The words hung in the air, a deadly promise. Chapter 8, Trial of Dawn. The combat circle was an ancient ring of standing stones on a wind-swept ledge behind the fortress. The ground was hard-packed earth, stained dark by history. I stood at the northern edge, dressed in simple, flexible trousers and a tunic, my feet bare on the cold stone. My star pulsed rhythmically, a calm, warm heartbeat. Across the circle, Alden Vane sneered, stretching his massive arms. He was a brute, and he knew it. Last chance to yield, girl. Spare yourself the embarrassment of being beaten like the dog you are. I said nothing. I centered myself, breathing as Alistair had taught me. Become the riverbed. Begin, the arbitrator called. Alden charged, not bothering to shift, aiming to end it quickly with a single humiliating blow. I didn't move until the last second. Then I sidestepped, fluid like water, and placed my palm on his rushing shoulder. Light flared, not an attack, but a push, a repulsion of pure energy.
Alden was thrown sideways, skidding in the dirt. He rose, his sneer replaced with fury. "Witchcraft," he snarled, and then he shifted. His transformation was violent, bones cracking, fur erupting. A massive, grisly gray wolf stood before me, saliva dripping from bared fangs. "Our turn," my wolf whispered, a voice of sun-warmed stone. I let the change take me. It wasn't painful, but powerful, like a sunrise happening inside my skin. Golden fur, bright as a new minted coin, flowed over me. When I stood on 4 paws, I was smaller than him, but I glowed. A soft, radiant light emanated from my form. My wolf was sleek, powerful, and her eyes were twin amber suns. Alden hesitated, his animal mind confused by the light.
Then he attacked. He was strong, relentless, a brawler. He tried to use his weight, his brute force, but I was speed and light. Every time his teeth or claws grazed me, my fur blazed brighter, searing him. He yelped, recoiling from the contact. He couldn't pin me. He couldn't catch me. I danced around him, light leaving afterimages in the air. Frustration made him reckless. He lunged for my throat, overextending. I saw my opening. Instead of meeting him head-on, I ducked under his jaws and slammed my body into his front leg. I heard the crack. He howled, collapsing, his leg bent at a sickening angle. He shifted back to human form, writhing in pain. I shifted back, standing over him, the dawn light haloing my form. I placed a bare foot on his chest. "Yield," I said, the command imbued with the weight of my bloodline. He gasped, his face twisted in agony and humiliation. "I yield." The words were a death rattle of his pride. I stepped back, looking not at him, but at the platform where Isolde and Leandra stood, frozen, their faces masks of utter horror. "Thornwood's claim is forfeit," I announced, my voice carrying on the wind. "Remember this day. Remember the worth you sold." As I turned, a sudden, overwhelming wave of heat surged through me, different from the power of the fight. It was a deep, primal fire starting in my core. My vision swam. My star blazed so brightly it hurt to look at. Alistair, watching from the sidelines, cried out, "By the stars! Her first blood rite! She's entering her power cycle!" The effect was instantaneous. A scent, like honeyed sunlight and wildflowers, exploded from me. Every unmated male in the vicinity stiffened. Alden, broken on the ground, groaned and tried to crawl toward me. Kaelin was at my side in an instant, his own shadows erupting around him in a protective, possessive cloud. His stormy eyes bled to pure, volatile black. "Get her inside," he snarled at Alistair. But before anyone could move, the fortress shook. A deafening explosion ripped through the morning air coming from the eastern wall. A guard sprinted toward us, bleeding from his temple. "My king! The eastern gate! It's gone! They're inside!" "Who?" Kaelin demanded, shielding me with his body. The guard's face was white with terror. "The Crimson Sun. They've found her, and they've brought an army." Chapter 8. The Crimson Sun Rises. Chaos. The eastern wall was a smoldering ruin of black stone. Through the gap marched soldiers in armor the color of blood and burnished gold, their faces hidden behind masks shaped like stylized, cruel suns. The Crimson Sun, the fanatics who murdered my mother. At their head walked a man who seemed to suck the light from the air around him. He was old, draped in crimson robes, leaning on a staff topped with a pulsating black crystal. "Morvath," Alistair whispered, true fear in his voice. "The High Inquisitor. He was at the burning. He should be dust." Morvath raised his staff. His voice, amplified by magic, slithered over the battlefield. "There she is, the last weed in the garden. I plucked your mother. I will enjoy uprooting you." Rage, white-hot and pure, ignited in my soul. This was the face of my nightmares. Kaelin's shadows coalesced into solid tendrils, lashing out at the advancing soldiers, but the Crimson Sun fighters were prepared. They carried weapons that gleamed with a sickly green light, bane-forged steel, meant to disrupt magic. Our defenders clashed with them, the sounds of battle horrific. Morvath ignored it all. His eyes were on me. He thrust his staff forward. A beam of concentrated shadow shot through with crimson energy, screamed toward me. I reacted on instinct, throwing my hands up. A shield of golden light sprang to life before me. The dark beam slammed into it, spattering like ink on glass, but the shield held. I felt the strain in my bones. Impressive, Morvath crooned, walking closer. Raw power, but untrained. Let me show you the price of stolen light. He didn't attack me again. Instead, he aimed his staff at a group of our wounded being tended by healers near the inner keep. He was going to kill them to break me. No, I screamed. I didn't think. I leapt, throwing myself between his attack and the wounded. I couldn't block it, so I did the only thing I could think of. I opened myself to it. I let the corrupt, hate-filled energy hit me. It was agony. It was poison and ice and a century of hatred pouring into my veins. My light screamed in protest, dimming, flickering. Inside me, a war erupted. The pure dawn star energy of my blood fought the invasive, rotten shadow magic of the crimson sun. I felt myself tearing apart at the seams, but I held. I absorbed it all. And then, a miracle. Deep within, where my core of light met that invading darkness, something new was born. Not destruction, but transformation. The light didn't destroy the dark, it cleansed it, integrated it. My eyes snapped open. My amber irises now swirled with threads of silvery shadow. I raised my hands. The power that gathered there was not pure gold. It was a brilliant, blinding white shot through with arcs of soothing gray. It was balance. What are you? Morvath breathed, taking a step back, true fear in his eyes for the first time. I am the end of your crusade, I said, my voice the sound of a glacier calving and a forest growing. I released the power. It wasn't an attack. It was a wave of absolution. It washed over the Crimson Sun soldiers. Their bane weapons shattered. Their masks cracked. They didn't scream. They sighed, collapsing as if a terrible weight had been lifted. The hatred that fueled them was simply extinguished. Morvath shrieked, raising his staff. The black crystal exploded. The backlash of his own broken magic consumed him in a silent swirl of ash and fading crimson light. The battle was over. The remaining invaders, leaderless and stripped of their fanaticism, dropped their weapons. I stood amidst the rubble, the combined power still humming in my veins, the strange new white light fading from my skin. Then the exhaustion and the returning overwhelming heat of my blood rite hit me like a physical blow. I crumpled. Kalen caught me, his arms strong around me. "I've got you," he murmured into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Elara. You ended them." "Is it over?" I whispered, my vision darkening at the edges. "This battle is," he said, lifting me gently, "but we have another matter to attend to." He carried me away from the ruin, towards the solitude of his tower. The heat between us was no longer just mine. It was a shared current, a magnetic pull of two opposite forces finally finding their point of equilibrium. Chapter 9. The Bond of Equals. Kalen carried me not to my chambers, but to his private solar, a room of deep blues and grays with a wall of windows facing the endless mountains. He set me down on a large divan before the fire. The heat of my cycle was a living thing inside me, but the aftermath of the battle had tempered it into something more manageable, a deep, resonant hum rather than a roaring fire. He knelt before me, his stormy eyes searching mine. The silvery shadows still swirled in my amber gaze. "Your power, it changed. It balanced," I said softly, looking at my hands. "Their darkness, I didn't fight it. I made it part of the light." "You healed it," he corrected, wonder in his voice. He slowly, carefully took my left hand, his thumb brushing over the star mark. A spark, not of pain, but of profound rightness, leaped between us. I felt it then, a golden thread, fragile but undeniable, spinning from my core to his. A bond, not forced, not demanded, but naturally occurring. The prophesied balance. "I can feel it," he whispered, his eyes closing. "The curse, it's quiet. For the first time in my life, the shadow is just a part of me, not a poison." He opened his eyes, and they were clear, the storm calmed to a gentle gray. "You didn't just save your people today, Elara. You saved mine." The moment stretched, charged with the new connection humming between us. This was the moment the stories spoke of, the kiss, the claiming. But Kalen did not move. He simply held my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The respect in that stillness meant more than any passionate gesture could have. "The bond is forming," I said, my voice barely audible. "I can feel it too." "It is," he agreed, "but a bond between a king and a queen of lost light, it cannot be a thing of impulse. It must be a covenant, a choice made in full clarity, not in the heat of a battle or a cycle." He stood, releasing my hand, though the golden thread remained. "You need rest, true rest. We will speak of covenants tomorrow." He left me then, with the fire and the stars, and the gentle, thrilling pulse of a new bond being woven. It was a halal moment, built not on physical possession, but on mutual salvation, profound respect, and the beginning of a deep, soul-deep understanding. Chapter 10. The Queen's Justice. In the days that followed, the fortress healed. The wall was repaired, stronger, the stones seemingly fused with a permanent, soft glow from my light. The defeated Crimson Sun soldiers, stripped of their fanaticism, were given a choice: swear new oaths to a new order, or be exiled without weapons. Most chose to stay. Word of the Dawn Star Queen and the fall of the Crimson Sun spread across the continent like wildfire. Delegations began to arrive, not with threats, but with tribute and uneasy curiosity. I stood beside Kalen on the great balcony as he addressed the gathered packs and dignitaries. "Lords and ladies of the realms, I present to you Queen Elara of the Solara, the Dawn Star Reborn, who has broken the shadow curse and ended the Crimson Sun." The cheers were thunderous, but my eyes were drawn to a small guarded group at the back of the platform. Isolde, Leandra, and Alden Vane, in prisoner's gray, bound but unharmed. Kalen had ordered them brought from the dungeons, at my request. "Approach," I commanded, my voice calm. They were pushed forward. Isolde's finery was gone, her face pale. Leandra's beauty was brittle with fear. Alden would not meet my eyes, his pride a broken thing. "Do you remember what you told me? You called me a ghost, a runt, garbage." Leandra flinched. "I could have you executed. I could have you imprisoned for life. I could return to you every ounce of misery you gave me." I paused, letting the fear choke them. "But I will not. That is the way of the old world, the world of Vane and Vorin, of cruelty and transactions." I stepped closer. "You will serve. You will scrub floors in the lower halls. You will sleep in the servants' quarters. You will eat what you are given. And every day you will remember the priceless thing you traded for 30 silver coins. You will live with the consequence of your choice." I gestured to Mistress Greer. "Take them to their new duties. Let them learn the value of honest labor." As they were led away, Isolde finally broke, sobbing. Leandra worked back once, her eyes hollow. There was no satisfaction in it, only a deep, weary sense of justice served. I turned back to the crowd. "The old age is over. Let a new age begin, where worth is not in your bloodline, but in your heart, where a servant can become a queen, and a king can be healed by hope." The roar that followed shook the very mountains. I was no longer the ghost of Stonehaven. I was Elara, Queen of Dawn and Shadow, and our story was just beginning. Chapter 11. The Council of Whispers. Peace, it turned out, was a different kind of battle. With the Crimson Sun shattered, their network of spies and sympathizers across the continent lay exposed, a festering wound. In the great war room of obsidian, maps were spread across a vast table of polished basalt. Kaelin, myself, Alistar, and the commanders of his armies stood around it. Pins of black and gold marked known Crimson Sun holdouts. "They've gone to ground," General Wren grumbled, a grizzled wolf with a scar across his jaw. "Scattered like roaches, but the ideology remains, the belief that the Solara are abominations." "It is a weed with deep roots," Alistar said, his misty eyes troubled. "You cut off the head, but the roots might sprout elsewhere, in another generation." I traced a finger over the map, near the southern forests. "Here, the reports say the villagers are hiding a fugitive priest, not out of belief, but out of fear." Kaelin watched me. "What is your counsel, my queen?" The title still sent a thrill through me. "We cannot hunt every fearful villager. Terror was the Crimson Sun's tool. We must use its opposite." "Light," Kaelin said, understanding dawning. "Not the light of power, but of truth, of aid." I nodded. "Send envoys, not soldiers, healers, teachers. Let them see that the abomination brings medicine, not fire. Let them see that the Shadow King offers protection, not subjugation. We must be the cure for the fear they planted." It was a strategy of the heart, not the sword. Some of the commanders looked skeptical, but Kaelin's gaze was unwavering. "Do it," he commanded. "The Queen's will is my command. We will win this war not by breaking their bodies, but by healing their minds." It was the first true test of our joint rule, a gamble on compassion. As the council adjourned, Alistar lingered. "A wise strategy, child, but know this, there will be those who see mercy as weakness. They will test you." "Let them," I said, the star on my wrist warming. "I have faced monsters in human form. I am not afraid of political tests." Alistar smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "No, I suppose you are not."
With the immediate threats receding, my training intensified, but its nature changed. It was no longer about control, but about exploration. Alistair and I moved from the secluded courtyard to the highest tower, open to the sky. "The Solara gifts were many," he explained one morning as the first rays of sun hit the peaks. "You have manifested the light of presence, the aura that commands respect. You have shown the light of purity, the cleansing force. Now we seek the others, the light of healing, the light of vision." Healing came first, and it came with a price. A young guard was brought to me, his arm badly burned in a forge accident. I placed my hands over the wound, reaching for that inner well of power, but instead of the brilliant white light of balance, I called upon a softer, gentler gold. It flowed from my palms, warm and liquid. The guard gasped, not in pain, but in relief. Before our eyes, the angry red flesh smoothed, the blisters receded, leaving behind pink, new skin. The exhaustion that hit me was profound, a deep drain that left me swaying. Healing, I learned, took a piece of my own energy and gave it freely. Kaelin found me afterwards, pale and resting in the solar. He wordlessly sat beside me, and I felt a cool, strengthening energy seep from him into me through our fledgling bond, shadow offering rest to the weary light. "You cannot pour from an empty cup," he murmured. "Even the sun rests behind the mountains." The light of vision was more elusive. It came not in practice, but in dreams, vivid, startling dreams. I saw a forest I did not know, with trees of silver bark. I saw a locket buried beneath roots. I saw a man with Kaelin's stormy eyes, but lighter hair, walking those woods, searching. I spoke of the dream to Alistair. "Prophecy or memory of your bloodline," he mused. "The Solara were sometimes seers. The locket, it may be a key, a memory made manifest." That afternoon, a scout returned from the Thornwood border with a sealed chest salvaged from Stonehaven's ruins at my request. Inside were the pitiful remains of my old life, and at the very bottom, wrapped in a moth-eaten shawl, was a small, tarnished silver locket. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a tiny, faded portrait of a woman with my amber eyes and a smile like sunrise, my mother, and on the reverse, an engraving of a 7-pointed star and a single word, Aurel, my true family name. The past was not gone. It was waiting to be claimed. Chapter 13. The Forgotten City. The dream of the silver-barked forest returned, stronger, more insistent. The man with thorn eyes was clearer now, his face etched with sorrow. He was placing the locket in a hollow. Aurel, Alistair breathed when I described it in detail. The Silverwood. It was a sacred grove to the Elara, north of their capital city. It was said to be lost after the burning. Kaelin studied the old maps. The geography matches the wildlands beyond the Black River. No pack claims it. It's considered cursed. "We must go," I said, the pull in my blood undeniable. "It's a piece of my history, a piece of our history," I added, looking at Kaelin. The prophecy of balance suggested our bloodlines were always meant to be intertwined. He didn't hesitate. "We leave at first light, a small party, speed and secrecy." The journey took us through lands that felt asleep, untouched by time. The air grew thick with old magic. Finally, we found the Silverwood. The trees were indeed pale, their bark shimmering like metal in the dappled light. An ancient, profound peace hung over the place. Following the dream memory, I led us to a great, lightning-blasted oak at the grove's heart. My hands knew where to dig at its roots. The earth was soft. My fingers closed around cold metal. I pulled out a rusted iron box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was not just my locket, but a bundle of letters, a ring set with a sunstone, and a delicate scroll. The scroll was a family tree tracing the Aurel line back centuries, and there, on a branch thought to have ended, was my mother's name, Lyra Aurel, and connected to it by a line of gold was another name, Theron Thorn. Kaelin took a sharp breath. My great-uncle, he disappeared decades ago. The family story was that he went mad after the plague and wandered into the wilds to die. I read the letters. They were love letters, desperate and hopeful, between Lyra Aurel and Theron Thorn. They spoke of a secret love, a hope to unite the bloodlines to heal the growing shadow sickness in the thorns. They spoke of me, of a child who would be born of both bloodlines, a living bridge. "They knew," I whispered, tears blurring the elegant script. "They dreamed of us. They hid the truth to protect it." Theron had not gone mad. He had come here, to her sacred place, to guard their secret and their hope after she was killed. He had buried this proof and likely died watching over it. We stood in the silent grove, the past rushing in to fill the gaps in our story. Our meeting was not chance. It was a destiny planted long ago, finally coming to bloom. The bond between us hummed, stronger now, fortified by this revealed truth. Chapter 14. The Covenant. Returning to Obsidian with the chest felt like bringing a sacred relic home. The evidence of our intertwined destiny changed everything. The bond was no longer just a magical occurrence, it was a historical inevitability, a promise made by our ancestors. A formal covenant ceremony was planned, not a mating ritual, but a binding of kingdoms, of bloodlines, of purpose. It would be held in the Silverwood, the heart of the revealed truth. On the day, representatives from every major and minor pack attended, standing among the silver trees. I wore a gown the color of dawn, embroidered with threads of shadow gray. Kalen wore his customary black, but with a new clap-clasp, a sunstone set in obsidian, a mirror to the ring I now wore. Alistair officiated. We did not exchange vows of possession, but oaths of partnership. Do you, Kalen of Thorn, vow to rule not with shadow alone, but with the wisdom of balance, to honor the light as your own, and to shield it with your life? I so vow, he said, his stormy eyes clear and certain. Do you, Elara of Aurel, vow to rule not with light alone, but with the strength of shadow, to honor the darkness as your own, and to guide it with your heart? I so vow, I answered, my voice steady. Then we spoke the vow together, our hands clasped, the star mark and his shadow-chilled skin touching. We vow to be the bridge, the dawn that accepts the night, the shadow that respects the day. 2 bloodlines, 1 throne.
2 hearts, 1 covenant. As we spoke, a visible phenomenon occurred. A soft white light emanated from me, while gentle silvery shadows swirled from Kalen. They met in the space between us, weaving together into a beautiful, intricate pattern of light and dark that hung in the air for a moment, before settling over us both like a blessing. The gathered packs knelt, not in fear, but in respect. The covenant was sealed. That night, in a pavilion erected in the grove, we sat together, the bond a solid, warm presence between us. It feels complete, Kalen said quietly. The silence in my blood is gone. It's not an absence, it's a harmony. The loneliness is gone for me too, I admitted. I spent my life feeling like a fragment. Now I feel whole. Not because of you, I clarified, meeting his gaze, but with you. He smiled, a true, unguarded smile that transformed his face, a distinction our ancestors would be proud of. It was a chaste night, a night of profound conversation and shared silence under the stars of our forebears. The physical union could wait. The union of souls was already absolute. Chapter 15. A New Dawn. A year passed. The Light Envoy's strategy proved successful. Villages once cowed by Crimson Sun rhetoric now flew the twin banners of the sun and shadow. The fortress of obsidian was no longer a place of dread, but a beacon. We built a new hall of learning there, where Elara healing techniques and Thorn's shadowcraft were taught side by side. Isolde, Leandra, and Alden remained in the lower halls. I made a point of walking there sometimes, not to gloat, but to see. Isolde's hands, once soft, were now rough from work, but she moved with a quiet diligence that was new. Leandra, stripped of her beauty's privilege, had formed a tentative friendship with a shy girl from the kitchens. Alden worked in the stables, his arrogance broken, finding a grim satisfaction in the care of animals who asked for nothing but kindness. They were not happy, but they were becoming different people. Justice had become redemption. One evening, Kalen and I stood on our balcony, the one where we had first truly spoken. The setting sun painted the world in our colors, amber and gray. The scout from the Western Pass returned. He reports flowers, blooming in the high ice where nothing has grown for a century. I leaned into his side, feeling the steady, balanced strength of him. The world is healing with us. He looked down at me, his arm around my shoulders. Do you ever miss it, the simplicity of not being queen? I thought of the cellar, the hunger, the silence. I miss the girl I was sometimes, her resilience, but I do not miss her life. She was a seed, waiting for the sun. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head, a gesture of pure affection. And what a sunrise she became. Below us, the fortress lights twinkled like fallen stars. Beyond the mountains, a continent once divided by fear and old hatreds was slowly knitting itself back together under a new, balanced rule. The servant girl was a legend now. The Dawn Star Queen was a reality, and our story, the story of light and shadow finding their perfect, peaceful equilibrium, was just the first chapter of a new age. The sun had set on the old world, and tomorrow promised a truly new dawn.